Hi everyone, my name is Devaka Korea. Most people call me Dave, and for the last 15 years I've been working with software vendors that provide systems for stock exchanges like order matching or execution systems, market surveillance systems, order routing systems, and more recently order management systems used by stockbrokers for both institutional as well as retail trading. This video is part of a series where I'm building a desktop application to help trade on the stock market. In the last video, I spoke about the graphing capabilities that's being built out, more for technical analysis. This one will continue on that theme and touch on a few topics to demonstrate the functionality in a bit more detail. I plan to cover 3 topics using the system to demonstrate its capabilities. The first is going through the basics of Candlestick Charts, and I'm also going to touch on high Kanashii charts. The second topic will touch on 3 indicators. It's over here. We have the trend indicators, momentum, volatility, and volume, but I'm going to touch on one trend indicator, which is the MACD. I'm going to touch on one momentum indicator, which is the RSI, or the relative strength indicator, and one volatility indicator, which is the Bollinger Bands. Thirdly, I'll be talking about automatically detecting candlestick patterns. That's up here. And finally, I'll touch on what I plan to build next. The main objective is to help someone who has very little knowledge on technical analysis, and for the software to give you cues and little hints without being overwhelmed by all the various patterns, indicators, trading strategies that are out there. Okay, so let's start off with the candlestick charts. There's a lot of information on the web regarding candlesticks, but I think it's important to touch on it from a data point of view before we get into actual pattern detection. We'll start on a new workspace to keep things simple. And let's add the graph in there. So at the end of the demo, the chart will probably look like this. Let's get the RSI in. It's a whole load of data there. So I spoke of 2 external data providers in my previous videos. I can connect to either Alpha Vantage or to the IEX Cloud API to retrieve stock data. Alpha Vantage covers quite a few international exchanges, but it has a limited amount of data, whereas IEX Cloud is more comprehensive and covers the US and a few other exchanges like the LSE, but it doesn't cover the ASX. Okay, so let's get rid of some of this clutter. So the candlesticks are drawn based on some very basic information. We can download it from here, but I've already got a test file, so I'll probably refer to that file, which is over here. It's a CSV file, and it has the open, high, low, close, and it has it for a number of days. So it's a command separated file, and that's all the information that will be plotted for one candle. So we have about 239 candles, I believe, and each row on this in this file basically corresponds to a candle on the chart. The high and the low is easy, so if you take a candle that has the 2 wicks, this up here, that's the high point, and right down here, that's a low point. So the 2 wicks are drawn using the high and the low, and the body of the candle is basically drawn using the open and the close. And if the stock opened or it closed higher than it opened, then it'll be in green, and if it closed lower, it'll be red. And that's basically what the tooltip is saying. You have the high, you have the low. So high is 95.61, low is 78.1, and then it opened at 81, and because it closed higher at 84, it's going to be green, which means there was a gain, and the gain is about 3.83%. Now, given that there is 239 candles drawn on this chart, the amount of information that you get from it is actually 239 times 4, because you have each candle representing 4 data points, which works out to about 956 data points or information that's been drawn on this chart. And the color itself gives you some information as well. So that's another, say, 239 pieces of information. So overall, you can see that this simple chart has over 1,000 pieces of information. A picture really is worth 1,000 words, or 1,000 data points in this case. The chart on its own, if nothing, gives you an indication of the trend. So you can see that the price is going up, and then it goes down, and then it goes up, and then it goes down, similar to a wave. So if I bring a line chart in here, you can see that pattern as well. Yeah. But the candles, they actually give you a little more information, and that's really what we'll talk about when we go into the candlestick pattern detection. But since we are on trends, I thought I'll just touch on the Kanashii chart, and maybe we'll split this chart into two and get another chart. So it's the exact same chart, no difference. It's got the same data, and basically what I want to show here is, instead of the candlestick, I'm just going to choose Kanashii. All right. So what Kanashii will do, it's almost the same as the candlestick, but it uses the same candlestick data, but when you're drawing it, it uses the previous candlestick and the current one, and it combines the two to give you a new value for the candlestick. And basically, this kind of shows you, okay, if it's a normal candlestick, you'll have green and red, green and red, green and red, green and red. Whereas when you turn on the Kanashii, it smooths it out a bit so that it shows a clear pattern. So you have a longer run of green, and then you have a bit of red, and then you have a longer run of green here, and so on and so forth. So basically, it doesn't turn color until there's a significant movement. And I've used this pattern to basically, for example, buy when on the first change of the green candle, or maybe the second, and then let it run all the way till there are maybe one or two candles in the opposite direction, and then I'd sell and then buy. So you can see that it kind of shows you the trend a bit better than a normal candlestick pattern. Okay, so let's get rid of this chart. Back to the candlestick. Maybe we'll choose Kanashii, and then we'll start off with an indicator. But before I move on to the indicators, let me just move these guys to my favorites. So these are the three indicators that we're going to talk about: the MACD, the RSI, and the Bollinger Bands. And we'll start off with the MACD. Okay, so the moment I've added the MACD in, you can see that it's added two lines. That's the MACD line, and then the other one's the signal line. And then you have at the bottom a bunch of bars or histograms. And you have a positive where it shows green. If you take this as 0, um, above 0 is positive in green and below 0 is negative. And basically what the MACD will tell you, let me turn on my tracker. What the MACD will tell you is when you see this blue line crossing the red line or the red line crossing the blue line, that's kind of an indication um, that you could basically get into a trade. So the way I use it is, and that's what I've plotted up here. So I've basically detected a pattern, and the moment it's crossing, I've said the MACD line crossing below the signal line usually indicates it's time to sell, and I've plotted that here. But this may not always be the case. It's just an indication, and that's why using multiple indicators to kind of figure out when you should enter into a trade is always beneficial, because it's getting more information in and you're not just relying on the one indicator. At the same time, when you read about indicators, you'll always hear that you shouldn't add too many, because as we saw before, just the candlestick alone, you're putting so much of information in. It's hard to process a lot of information when it's just visually in front of you, and that's why I choose to kind of have the software detect certain patterns for me, and then summarize that, filter that down, and give it to me on the chart. But later I'll talk about what I plan to do in terms um, of getting that information, and not just graphically displaying it, but building sort of like an algorithm to make decisions in order to trade. So coming back to the MACD, as you can see here, you got another signal saying, hey, the MACD line crossing over the signal line usually indicates it's time to buy. And you can see that if you did buy here and you let it ride, and then here it crosses, and where it's crossed, you got a plot there, and that's all the the pattern detection or the smart capabilities is telling you. It's just telling you the MACD is saying maybe you should buy here, sorry, sell here, maybe you should buy here, sell here, buy here, sell here. So that's all I'm kind of taking from the MACD. Um, you can read about the MACD in greater length, but when I trade, basically I have a high Kanashii on and the MACD, and this is really what I'm looking for. Okay, so let's talk about the RSI next. I'll put it on top of the MACD, so that's the relative strength index. And as you can see, it is a blue line going between 0 and 100. And you'd have upper band and a lower band. And if the RSI goes above, usually it's set to 70, it's considered overbought. And then if it comes below the 30, it's considered oversold, and you would see that here, and overbought being over here and over here. As you can see, in this case, compared with the MACD, the RSI suggests that you should sell over here, just because it's gone above that 70 line over right here. But as you can see, the MACD says that it hasn't crossed yet, so shouldn't be able to sell. So I usually use the MACD as a better indicator, but and I don't use the RSI as much, but it's a good indication of where the buying and selling pressure is. So it helps when you're using both together. The Bollinger Bands are basically three lines drawn on top of the price trend. So it's you get the upper bands, that's the upper band, that's this blue line here, and then you have a middle band, that's more like the average of the price, and then you have a lower band here. And usually if the price is touching the upper band, it usually indicates being overbought, and then if it's touching the lower band, it usually indicates that it's oversold. And usually the width of the band, or the wider the bands are, it indicates more volatility, and um, the narrower the band gets, it indicates kind of less volatility there. So I know this is a lot of information here on the graph, but the Bollinger Bands don't help me too much, but it's again a good, just like the RSI, it's a good indication of where the price is moving. Okay, so let's get rid of the MACD and the RSI, and also the Bollinger Bands and all the analysis that's been plotted up. And let's just enable some candlestick detection. So I've got a couple of icons plotted on the chart, and basically I'm running the candlestick data through a a free library called TALib, which is Technical Analysis Library. Basically, I'm giving it all the candlestick information and asking it to detect various patterns. And I've asked it for the Harami cross, got a little summary as to what that is, and it says that it's a large candlestick that moves in the direction of the trend, followed by a smaller doji. So that's this one here. Here we have a hammer detected. I believe it's a previous candle. That's this one there. And then here we have engulfing. Again, I believe it's those two candles there, or it could be this one. I haven't gone through all the patterns yet, but looks very okay. The Marabuzu is usually a candle without a wick, and this candle seems to have a smaller lower wick, so I'm not sure whether that's entirely correct. And again, Marabuzu, there's another hammer detected here. So a hammer basically meaning a long, usually a short body with a longer wick. Engulfing pattern detected here. Morning star. Yeah. And if you look at the code, it's basically using this external library. It's the tic-tac-tech.ta.library.co, and I'm using the candle hammer. If you inspect the class, you can see that it has all the functions that I'm using for Bollinger Bands. It has basically a whole load, so all the candlestick patterns are here. So when it says CDL, and you can see that it has a bunch of candlesticks, and I'm just using a very few candlesticks there, and it has quite a few functions that you can use, and it looks quite powerful. So basically, I don't have to actually plot these values, even from the values that I got from the indicators. It can all be fed into kind of like an algorithm for the ASX 200 stocks and run some of this analysis and automatically detect these various patterns. And of course, you would set your strategies accordingly, how you'd like buy signals or sell signals to be generated, and then you could actually work that into an algorithm in order to kind of generate your orders so that you don't need to really plot this information in the charts themselves. But it helps you to backtest and just run scenarios. And what if you gave $1,000 and you traded in a certain way using these algorithms that you've come up with, and check how much profits or losses you've made. So you could run them through again and again, tweaking the values to check the various outcomes, and that way you could kind of build a better strategy. So that's it for this session, guys. I hope you enjoyed the session on the indicators. I plan to add a lot more indicators and do a lot more on the analysis side. So that would be the next couple of videos that I'll be making. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in a couple of weeks.